country per person than the United States. But since there are 1.4 billion people in China, even though China is perhaps 1/3 of the per capita gross domestic product of the United States, measured in a particular way without getting into details, it still is a larger economy now in that measurement, because called international dollars or international prices, because it's got so many people. That's not a reason to panic. That's not a reason to say China's an enemy. I take note of the fact that in the last 40 years, while the US has been nonstop in war, China hasn't had one war beyond its borders during the last 40 years. So that's the aggressive country. We've been in Iraq, in Afghanistan, trying to overthrow the Syrian government, overthrowing the Libyan government. You name it. We bombed Belgrade. There are more than well over 100 military interventions that the United States has been engaged in since 1990. I think Tufts University scholars counted about 200 distinct military interventions. China, no. But we're the ones saying China's a danger, it's going to take over the world, and so forth. And by the way, there are countless reasons to understand that's not the point. The point is not that China's going to be the new unipolar power of the world. China has a lot of domestic development issues. China, like everybody, is suffering from climate change. China's rapidly aging. China's population is going to be in significant decline in the 21st century, by the way. According to the UN data, the population by the end of this century will have declined from today's 1.4 billion people, maybe to 800 million, if basically the current fertility patterns continue to hold. The point is, we have concocted a tale of fear. We have concocted a tale that I think they call China our pacing competitor. But basically, the newspapers say China's our enemy. We get to break every rule. We say we want a rule-based order, but we just put unilateral trade policies or unilateral sanctions or unilateral export bans on technology, all in violation of basic World Trade Organization standards. And we say that's because we defend the rules-based order. I've been around this a long time. This is a kind of a game of a narrative. The underlying purpose is that American foreign policy is based on the idea that America should be the predominant power. Our foreign policy strategists believe we can't be safe unless we are the most powerful. Now, what does that say about the other 192 countries in the UN? That safety doesn't apply or shouldn't be a consideration for them? The U.S. has a strange, not the U.S., these U.S. strategists, these U.S. neocons have a very strange idea about security. They have a very strange idea about American interests. They keep getting us into wars. They keep getting us into confrontations, which are extremely dangerous. Why did Speaker Nancy Pelosi fly to Taiwan in the middle of all these tensions when the Chinese said, please don't come. Please, this is not a good idea. Please don't raise tensions. Please abide by the one China policy. Please try not to let the temperatures get out of control. No, we have the right to go. I can go when I want. I'm Speaker of the House of the United States. There's no prudence, no sense. And we have a world of rising tension, by the way, which is not only a disaster for Ukraine and a threat for the world in so many ways, it's also terrible if you think maybe we should be doing something about climate change. Maybe we should be doing something about these long-term, really deep challenges. Maybe we should be helping poor people so the children can go to school or have health care. No, we need confrontation. And that's what bothers me. We are concocting these incredible dangers rather than talking to our counterparts.
Yes. And you're an economist, Professor Sachs, and you have come out very firmly against sanctions. You were co-author of that landmark report on sanctions on Venezuela. And you've also talked a lot about sanctions on Syria. But sanctions has been a principal weapon in this aggressive posture the United States has taken toward, and the entire West really has taken toward Russia and China. Russia is now the most sanctioned country in the world, and China has been facing deeper and deeper sanctions on areas like high technology and, of course, on these human rights issues in Xinjiang, etc. Uh, could you talk about what are the impact of these sanctions in particular on Russia and China now on the entire global economy? What do you see their impact as being? And yeah, I just want to know generally your take on this form of economic warfare that the U.S. is leading toward these two major powers, rising powers in the world.
Well, first, just to be clear, the U.S. puts sanctions all over the place, and often it creates havoc for the countries involved. One of the biggest peacetime collapses in modern history is Venezuela because of the comprehensive U.S. sanctions, which crushed the oil sector of Venezuela and crushed the Venezuelan economy. The idea was very clear. The idea was to try to overthrow President Maduro. Well, I don't think that's a legitimate aim of foreign policy, period. Why does the U.S. use sanctions? Because it's just the stroke of a pen of the president. Because Congress isn't asked, the American people aren't asked, no one pays attention to this. The suffering that sanctions cause or the disruptions that they cause are not noticed. There's no direct outlays. There are no boots on the ground. So it's viewed as a freebie. But it's extraordinarily destructive. And in my understanding, with extensive discussions with international legal experts and human rights specialists, it's against international law, as it should be, because it's a unilateral action which is imposing extraordinarily high costs on others. Now, what it's doing in vis-a-vis Russia, ironically, is having a massive disruption of the world economy, probably hurting Europe. I don't know if it's right to say as much as it's hurting Russia, but a massive boomerang effect in Europe, because basically Europe traded with Russia. The United States calls it dependence on Russian energy. I call it trade. It's this the difference of economists and these geopolitical strategists. Europe was importing Russian natural gas and oil, and it was exporting other things to Russia. And the sanctions have broken all of that down, disrupted supply chains, directly impacting Europe, but we know also impacting the whole world. Suddenly fertilizer shortages, food price increases, incredibly volatile energy increases, big disruptions to the world natural gas markets. We've made a mess. The theory in the United States was this was going to cripple the Russian economy and end the Russia's war-making capacity. And I wrote on general principles, I have to say, not on any specific quantified model, but I wrote on general principles in the spring. Don't bet on it. These sanctions are very destructive, but they rarely have their intended outcomes. After all, we crushed the Venezuelan economy, but Maduro is there. Thank you very much. And now we're reopening relations because we want their oil suddenly. So this is typical U.S. policy. You do a huge amount of damage, you pay no attention, and you just go on. Another, by the way, set of sanctions is the United States grabbed the foreign exchange reserves of Afghanistan on the way out last year. Unbelievable. That's their foreign exchange reserves. We took their central bank's foreign exchange reserves, $8 billion, and the economy imploded. It was already in awful shape, but you can't run a country without a central bank, without foreign exchange reserves. But with the United States, hey, why not? No problem. That's typical.